We have some disturbing news today, and to be quite honest with you, it's gut-wrenching, to say the least, towards what has occurred. And we kind of seen this coming along as it was progressing from day to day, pertaining to the reports that was coming in pertaining to the Afghan people not being able to hold back the resistance movement pertaining to the Taliban, pertaining to the terrorist that is now taken over about 2/3 of their country, that up until about 90 days ago they didn't have control over. We have reached a pivotal point in this Afghanistan war of understanding that not only have we not gotten the bang for the buck, but we have gotten drawn into something that the rest of the United Nations did not support efficiently and adequately, and because of it, it makes us look like we didn't get the bang for the buck pertaining to trying to bring democracy over to a country that we thought was capable of fighting for itself and defending its own democracy. So if you don't mind, please listen to this, but keep in mind as you listen to this is all in unison of what escalated during Desert Storm and Desert Shield, and then us going into Afghanistan, supposedly because of the Taliban that was in behind the 9/11 attack, which is coming up less than 30 days from now. But if the truth be known, who was actually in behind 9/11 wasn't the actual Taliban, though it was terrorists that attacked us, but it was the Saudi terrorists that attacked us. You keep in mind there's something like 60 or 70 different groups over there in total. And as far as I'm concerned, each one of them needs to be labeled as a terrorist group. It ain't just ISIS. It ain't just the Taliban. It ain't just other types of evil demonic groups that we know that are hell-bent towards wanting to try to destroy open democracy. But it's almost all of them, because they'll burn the candle at both ends. They're untrustworthy. They don't have the backbone to stand up for what they claim that they believe in. And it's just, I'm going to use the word a big mess, but it actually goes beyond a big mess to the point that it's actually a horrifying mess. It's a horrifying big mess that the United States of America has gotten entrapped into this situation, to the point that now we're in a place of damned if you do and damned if you don't, pertaining to walking away from this particular situation. So if you don't mind, please listen to this, watch this with an open mind, but at the same time, please be praying. Be praying. Lord God Almighty, please be praying for our American troops.
The airport in Kabul to help evacuate embassy personnel and special immigrants from the country. Pentagon spokesman John Kirby says this is a limited mission and nothing more.
Isn't this ironic that in order to get out of 2,500, you're having to ramp up significantly?
No, I don't see. I don't share your view of the irony, Louis. This is a very temporary mission for a very specific purpose. That's a big difference than saying you're deploying for 8, 9, 12 months. Forces to stabilize and secure Afghanistan, which we've been doing for the last 20 years. This is a very narrowly defined, very temporary mission.
Now, all the while, Taliban forces have captured a dozen cities in roughly a week. Locals report beheadings of government officials, kidnappings of young girls to provide forced brides to Taliban fighters. All this as the 20th anniversary of 9/11 is just about a month away. Could there be a Taliban flag flying over the U.S. Embassy in Kabul by September 11th, 2021? Joining me now, former CIA officer and radio host Buck Sexton. Buck, as you watch these images, and there's reporting late in the day that Kandahar, the second largest city in Afghanistan, is now under Taliban control, you see these pictures and these videos, and you watch these reports coming across the wire. What do Americans at home who might be grappling with perhaps mixed emotions about this, in your view, what do they need to know?
Well, there's so much here that's really just in conflict with each other. I mean, I think at one level, Guy, you have people, I mean, I was in Afghanistan a decade ago, and what's happening right now wouldn't be a surprise if you had asked me then. I would have told you the moment the U.S. pulls out, you're going to have a deterioration. The surprise, I think, is in how rapid it has been. I think people would have expected that after 20 years, $1 trillion, countless tens of billions of dollars of just mentoring and direct support of the Afghan military, plus $1 trillion in the overall war effort, that we would last, or we would expect rather, the Afghan allies to last a bit longer than this. So I think that this has to be remembered was something that the Trump administration wanted to do. There is a bipartisan sense that it was time to go, but the withdrawal is about as awful and messy, it seems right now, as it could possibly be from the perspective of security in the country of Afghanistan. I mean, what an absolute debacle. And then we have to also think about the possibility, and I know no one wants to hear this, but we're already thinking about it, everyone is this going to get so bad? Is the Taliban perhaps going to decide that they'll bring in Al-Qaeda again,
right,
and then we'll be
the
discussing
cycle
another
continues.
U.S. military mission?
Right, it's like the cycle begins again, which is why we were in there in the first place, Buck. But to your point about how quickly it looks like the Afghan forces and the government has just sort of melted away and been completely overrun, is that perhaps an indication that after 20 years, this was never going to work? I mean, yes, there's a humanitarian catastrophe underway. This feels like a national humiliation for us. It does, given so much blood and treasure that's been spent there. Nevertheless, the results are speaking for themselves. Is this perhaps adding fuel to the argument that we should have gotten out a long time ago, because all the extra years apparently didn't achieve very much, which is a horrible thing to say, but here we are.
Well, as I said, I mean, the assessments even at the start of the first Obama term, which is when I was handling Afghanistan issues at the CIA's CIA Afghanistan desk, Guy, those assessments would have told you that the training of the Afghan national military, I mean, just in general, throughout the government, throughout the intelligence community, we all knew that there were tremendous problems of corruption, and this was going all the way up to the very top, and also just ineptitude on the part of the Afghan National Security Forces, Afghan National Police. And so none of this is really surprising, and I do think people are wondering, how was it we had so many cycles of military leadership? Look, I mean, a few thousand U.S. troops basically holds this place together, right? We all know, yeah, we have the best, most efficient, bravest military in the world. That doesn't translate necessarily, obviously, to the Afghan army. How was it we had so many cycles of leadership, four-star generals, ambassadors coming in who were saying, oh, we figured it out, we're making progress? They obviously weren't really making progress, Guy, at least in terms of a sustainable Afghan state. So we need to look at that as well. And then, of course, the possibility of having to go back in the future, which I know nobody wants to hear, but that's something we have to consider.
Yeah, and your heart just goes out. It's gut-wrenching to the people who have sacrificed so much, Americans in that country. And you think about the people in Afghanistan, women and girls in particular. I mean, it is going to be very ugly. Buck, we appreciate you coming on tonight. Thank you.
Any girl right now that's being seen without a head covering on and covering up her body completely is substance of being obtained, mutilated, raped, and basically massacred. All them girls going to school that we taught towards learning how to develop their independence, all of that will be thrown down the tubes pertaining to millions and millions and trillions of dollars that's been spent, not counting all the sacrifices that has happened pertaining to arms and legs and hands and eyes and people's lives. All of that will go down the tubes because of this type of invasion that's happening over there right now. And it's horrifyingly sad. As I said a while ago, it's horrifyingly sad to watch something like this unfold to the point that they themselves, the Afghan people, was not capable or willing to hold their own. It's really, really intensely sad.
Coming up, the outgoing Border Patrol chief now calling the situation on the southern border, quote, a national security crisis. Wait till you hear how many migrants illegally crossed into America last month alone. Will the White House ever change course as their policy crashes and burns? Plus, some of
This is another sad, sad situation in regards to the illegal immigrants coming over here because of the harsh conditions that they're going through, either in Mexico or Honduras or wherever, towards them basically risking their own lives, life and limb, and their children's life, just to be able to get hopefully to a better place, so that they can have a future, so that they can start their lives all over again. This whole thing is coming apart, and it's coming apart just like the Bible says that it was going to come apart, towards it being as the noise of thunder. One of the beasts said, "Come and see," pertaining to the opening, or during the opening phases of the first seal. It's also manifesting itself in regards to the Bible fulfilling its prophecy that in the last days Satan will rise up in great wrath, because he knoweth his time is short. Just a night or two ago, over in Frankfort, Tennessee, they had a dispersed argument over masks that just, I never would have thought that I would have seen people in the state of Tennessee doing what they was doing to professional people pertaining to doctors and school officials. But it ain't just happening in Tennessee, it's happening all over this country pertaining to mask mandates, and one governor giving out one order and another group of people not willing to accept that governor's orders. It's a constant rumble that's going on right now. And that's in addition to what's going on in the White House towards them trying to make good, sound investments in our children's future, towards trying to pass this and pass that and get enough money to do this and get enough money to do that. It's just a constant uproar. And the uproar that I'm listening to is not just happening over here. It's not just happening in Cuba. It's not just happening over in places over in Turkey and other parts of the country that's got massive wildfires right now, including up towards Russia, up towards the North Pole, and out west here in America. This uproar that I'm hearing is intensifying and getting louder and louder and louder. And if you'll throw this into the equation, pertaining to now over 3,000 troops is being ordered back into Afghanistan, that's another element that we're having to deal with, along with COVID, that's turning this into that much more of a uproar. For the Bible says that it was as the noise of thunder whenever these occurrences start unfolding. We're now visibly seeing biblical Bible prophecy coming true right in front of our eyes. And the best thing that I can tell my viewers, those that care anything about the windmill ministries and care anything about the future of the windmill ministries, is that for now the best thing that we can do is hunker down, dig in, hold your own, don't get excited, Try to do the best things that you can do pertaining to your family and yourself, pertaining to safety issues. Don't exploit yourself unnecessarily in areas that you're going to possibly wind up regretting down the road pertaining to the COVID. They got a thing right now up in where's that? Black Mountain or something like that, up towards Nebraska, where a bunch of bikes is coming together. They're claiming it's probably going to be at least 250,000 strong. They've already got concerts planned. We've already seen massive ball games. I mean, the people in Tokyo performed as adequately and as professionally as any group of people could have done in performing of the Olympics for 14 days by mandating and making sure that everybody was where everybody was supposed to be, positioning everybody, making sure testing after testing after testing, and they did not bring the spectators in there, because if they did, it would have been nothing but a cesspool for a breeding ground of more contaminants. The American people's going to have to wake up towards the seriousness of this. And they're going to have to get over the fact that before pre-COVID, people had certain inalienated rights. During a health crisis like this, it bends the rules a little bit towards having those same alienated rights, because now you have to be conservative towards the benefit of all of us, and not just one of us, or not just some of us, but it has to be in motion towards all of us if we're going to come out on top and beat this thing to the point that we can all say, well, we beat it instead of it beating us. We're going to have to be more adamant of what's going on and how it's going on, not just here in the United States, but all over the world. Because we are witnessing and seeing things right now that's happening that is not normal. Is not normal at all. And it's stuff that we're not used to seeing, it's stuff that we're not used to witnessing, and some people is going to have trouble digesting a lot of this stuff that's happening right now. That's why the suicide is so high. That's why the drug drug overdose is so high. That's why the gun violence is so high. That's why people on airplanes can't get along. That's why road rage is so high. That's why all these other occurrences that's happening is so high. It's boiling. And it's a tempo, and it's getting louder, and it's getting louder, and it's getting louder. And I'm just wondering, how loud will the loudness actually get before we start evening off to the point that instead of it getting louder, it actually starts getting quieter. We're in the middle of the 21st century, that obviously things wasn't handled right on the front end up in the White House 30 plus years ago. And because of this generational gap that has put us where we are, it has jeopardized the safety of not just a few of us, but all of us. And unless you're really willing to wash your hands, put on masks, take the initiative towards protecting yourself in extreme measures, you may not make it through this, because the Bible's very clear. He who shall overcometh shall not be hurt of the second death. He who shall overcometh. Overcometh what? Overcometh what? Overcome all the obstacles right now that we're dealing with that a year and a half, 2 years ago we wasn't dealing with. And it's only going to intensify, I'm afraid, and even get louder. He who, whenever it say he, that means men and women. He who, or whosoever, shall overcometh, shall not be hurt of the second death. There's lots of things going on right now that a human being can jeopardize their life in just a split second by being at the wrong place at the wrong time. And I ain't just necessarily talking about biological warfare. I'm talking about crack houses. I'm talking about drug-induced neighborhoods. I'm talking about being out on the interstate and it being so dangerous towards people's obnoxious driving. I'm talking about being robbed in broad daylight because our politics has failed, pretending to support a support system where everybody would be treated equal and fairly, and we would have jobs for even the hobo or the bum to take a part in. It's falling apart is the point that I'm trying to make. And as it's falling apart, the rumble is getting louder. It's getting louder and louder and louder. And as it gets louder, I'm just afraid it's going to even elevate into even a louder tempo.
The crisis at the border is not slowing down, just the opposite, in fact. This despite record summer heat. July's migrant encounters at the border increased 13% over June. And these are numbers that usually drop as summer sizzles. Not this year, and not under the...
Let's look at this again. Boom.
Summer heat. July's migrant encounters at the...
Boom. Look at what you're looking at right there. Now that's just a fraction of the people that's invading our borders. But the majority of them are people that's probably as it looks like right over here, and I'm sure it is, a baby probably maybe a year old. And then we got people like this guy and this guy and this guy here. It looks like he's probably in his early 20s. But the vast majority of the people that are making this debut, this run, are younger people because they're the people that are strong enough to be able to withhold and handle this type of brutality in getting over here. I'm pretty sure their parents told them good luck. That there ain't no future here in Honduras. There ain't no future here in the city of Mexico. There ain't no future here in all these other different places coming out of South America. But the point that I'm trying to make is this. That younger generation right there that you're looking at will be the very people that will be making political business decisions in the next 10, 20, 30, even 40 years from now. That same generation will be the people that will be pulling the ropes or bringing up the forefront into the future of where society is to go, even beyond them. So it's critical. It's critical, not just from an American standpoint, not just from a Mexican standpoint, but from a generational standpoint. It's critical that this gets handled in a proper way.
Border increased 13% over June. And these are numbers that usually drop as summer sizzles. Not this year, and not under this president. Ongoing, or I should say outgoing, Border Patrol Chief Rodney...
Let's back it up one more time. Let's get the figures. Sorry about that.
The crisis at the border is not slowing down, just the opposite, in fact. This despite record summer heat. July's migrant encounters at the border increased 13% over June. And these are numbers that usually drop as summer sizzles. Not this year, and not under this president. Ongoing, or I should say outgoing, Border Patrol Chief Rodney Scott says the crisis is officially a danger to the nation. Watch this.
Over and over again, I see other people talk about our mission, your mission, in the context of it being immigration, or the current crisis today being an immigration crisis. And I challenge you that I firmly believe that it is a national security crisis.
Even Joe Biden's Homeland Security Secretary, Alejandro Mayorkas, can't really spin this debacle.
The situation at the border is one of the toughest challenges we face. It is complicated, changing, and involves vulnerable people at a time of a global pandemic.
So what's it going to take, if anything, for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris to admit failure here and shift gears? Are they even capable of that? Panel is back. Sean Duffy, Jessica Tarloff, and Lee Carter. Sean, they told us this would be seasonal, and when it got really hot outside, the numbers would come down. That has not happened. 212,000 encounters and detentions at the border in July alone. Tens of thousands more that we know of who got away.
212,000. 212,000 people. That would be the equivalency of the whole county of Madison County. I'm estimating that they're probably somewhere in that area. I may be wrong. They may only be about 150,000. But if that gives you any type of ideal from the locals around here, that just consider any town that you know of, don't have to be in Tennessee, but anywhere, that has a population of about 250,000 people. Can you imagine 250,000 people entering into your neighborhood in and on a 30-day span? Walking up, wanting to know what to do next, where the bathrooms are, where the water fountain is, and what are we going to get for our next meal? Can you only imagine having to deal with something on this proportion? And like the commentators talking about, this is in the hottest part of the season, to where it's supposed to level off, supposed to be diminishing instead of increasing, but instead it's more and more coming in.
Axios has a report out recently indicating that 50,000 illegal immigrants were simply released into the United States with no court date, which is unprecedented. This mess keeps getting worse, and it seems like the Biden administration is just sort of wanting to close their eyes and wish this thing away.
Well, no, Guy, I don't think they want to wish it away. Actually,
this is part of those signs that I keep telling people about that listen to this message coming from the Windmill Ministries towards, we will see things in the last days such as we've never seen before. We ain't never seen this type of invasion coming over here to the border. We never would have thought that the Taliban would have taken back over Afghanistan. We're seeing things right now that even the smartest of the smart, the professionals, I'm talking about the genuine experts, cannot perceive, cannot project of what's going to happen in the next 30 days, much less in the next 30 years. It has become that awkward of everything that is basically going to hell in a handbasket. I guess that would be the proper word. That was Mr. Bush Sr.'s words whenever they ended a national ministry pertaining to Jimmy Swaggart in 1980 and 8. That it looks like the country's going to hell in a handbasket. Well, it looks like, Mr. Bush, your words have been probably some of the most on-the-spot words in 30-something years now that anybody could have ever spoke.
this was the intent of the policy, right? I mean, it's not complicated like Mayorkas says. It was actually quite simple, and Donald Trump had policies that actually secured the border. They could go back to those policies, and it gets really simple again. But what frustrates me is that as Americans, as we talked about in one of the last segments, have to have vaccine passports, we have people coming across the border who don't have vaccines at all, but they actually have COVID. And on the taxpayer dime, we're sending them around the country with COVID and infecting more Americans. I mean, the danger of this, we don't know if you have drug traffickers or human smugglers or terrorists coming into the country. It's an outrageous set of policies. It's easy to fix. The Biden administration just doesn't have the will to do it.
Yeah, they can just uncancel some of these successful Trump policies that were on the books and working in a lot of respects. Jesse, we just heard from Sean this mention of COVID. There was a report from the Washington Examiner out of Laredo, Texas, where the officials in that city learned that 40% of migrants coming to their city on buses had tested positive for COVID. So they didn't want to accept them. They sent them along to another city because they were worried about their hospitals overflowing. I mean, we don't want to blame immigrants for COVID. That's not what's happening here. But it's a bit much to see the Biden White House wagging their finger at Texas and blaming the government in Texas and the governor down there when this is happening at the southern border, and this is the Biden policy at work.
Well, I appreciate that you started with we don't want to blame immigrants for the COVID crisis, because it's certainly not their fault, and we should be helping as many people as we can when it comes to this illness. Obviously, for especially immunocompromised groups and elderly people who have a higher chance of passing away from it. But it's undoubtedly a problem, and I think that if we also had to live in lockdown, like I did in New York City, you were in Northern Virginia, for instance, that we need to have facilities that are COVID facilities where people can go there and be separated from healthy populations of other immigrants while they await their court date or wherever they are to go. In terms of the Biden administration not wanting to solve this crisis, I don't really buy that. And there are a few policies, not all of Trump's policies, many of which I disagree with, that I hope will be back, like the Remain in Mexico policy. I think that was a really useful one. It was one exactly.
I don't see how they're maintaining a hygiene level of acceptance in a crowd of children like that, with it being so many. They must have they got to have a streamline of hundreds of showers to where those kids is having to basically get herded in like a bunch of cows, to where this bunch, it's time for your showers today, this bunch, it's time for your showers tomorrow, and isolating them probably every other day, or maybe once every 3 days. I don't know, it may be once a week. But you got to have cleanliness involved whenever you put stuff that many people together. If not, you're going to have one of the biggest humanitarian crises that you've ever seen pertaining to germs. Same thing is happening over there right now in I think it's over in Syria, where about 3,000 immigrants is running from various problems in regards to terrorists that are having to just sleep and drink and eat in some of the most ungodliest conditions that you can think of. These conditions, whenever you put a bunch of human beings together, it of itself can create diseases, typo, all kinds of other types of diseases that can come from this, because people are not using hygiene properly, and this is where germs congregate and grow. They intensify. What did I say? Whenever the problem first initiated, whenever Donald Trump was president, pertaining to the illegal immigrants coming over here, one of the first things I said, and everybody shunned me for it, and this was way before COVID ever stuck its ugly head up, but one of the first things I said is that it needs to be controlled, because you never know what type of diseases that them people have been subjected to wherever that they was living at, and now they're bringing them diseases across the border over here to us. You can research some of my material, some of my audio, some of my data during and before COVID of me making statements pertaining to the border crisis that is now escalating and even getting worse.
And the Mexican president was all for it and has said to us and to Vice President Harris when she was down there that he would be perfectly happy to reinstate that. So I think that we should start there, make sure that everyone or as many people as possible that we are receiving are healthy when they get here, and then find some way to help them.
And we know it's not the
isn't
case.
today, but
You're right, but I mean, this is also, I think, a source of concern to Texans and Americans, and legitimate concern. Lee, briefly with you, I want to talk about the politics of this. Our new Fox News poll shows President Biden's approval rating on immigration massively underwater. He's got 35% approval on this issue. Is that a problem for Democrats politically as we start looking toward next year?
I think
Who knows? How come you're turning this into a political thing? Right now, we need to deal with the crisis that's going on. We ain't worried about an election. Besides that, there was already a problem with the border before Biden ever became president. We know that this was coming. We already seen this coming. There was massive groups that was coming over the border. That was the whole primary purpose for Trump, building the wall. See, people's little finite minds can only understand what's going on today. They don't remember what went on yesterday, or a week from yesterday, or a year from yesterday, or 10 years from yesterday. And that's one of the problems here in America. We want to stuff it down everybody's throats towards it being your fault, your fault. You're the one in charge. It's your fault. Well, guess what? They inherited this mess. These administrations for the past, I know 2 administrations, has inherited this type of a mess. Or at least this administration has. I mean, even whenever Obama come in power, he inherited a mess pertaining to the real estate bubble burst that happened, to the point that Bush had to borrow, I guess, right around $1 trillion to bail out all the banks and to bail out General Motors and Ford and Chrysler. I don't know, it may not have been all of them, but there was a big bailout and things went sour, and fuel went up to $4 and $5, $6 a gallon during the time that Bush was president, right before Obama became president. People don't remember all that stuff because they're asphyxiated on what's happening today, what's happening within arm's distance of my body right now, or within my comfort zone. They don't go back and look at the original origin of where it started to begin with. What caused it? Where did we start losing it? When did they start taking the eye off the ball? If we don't grasp reality towards what it's presenting its ugly head towards right now, I'm just afraid that we ain't seen problems yet. Not just problems across the border, not just problems with the election scandals, not just problems pertaining to the COVID diseases, but across the board, we haven't seen nothing yet, because as things are proportionally getting worse with the human behavior, with the Homo sapien behavior down here up onto the planet, so are things continuously getting worse environmentally, pertaining to Mother Nature lashing out, that the Bible predicted and said that these would all be the beginning of the great sorrows that will be fallen upon to humanity. It says very clearly in the Bible, woe, woe, woe be unto the inhabitants here upon to the planet whenever these things start unfolding and start taking place. There's nothing good about that woe to the inhabitants up onto the planet. And if you don't believe me, you can read it for yourself. If you've never read the book of Revelations, if you've never sunk your head in the Bible pertaining to understanding what's going to occur in the last days, probably now would be a good time to do it. Or start a Bible class, a bunch of people coming to your house, and be environmentally friendly, and everybody keep their distance, and keep the idea pertaining to germs and everything. Stay within 5 or 6, 10 feet apart, etc. Don't put too many people in one room. We know the score. We know the routine. But if you've never read the Bible pertaining to the book of Revelations, I strongly advise you to do it, especially the first 3 chapters of Revelations. Especially that, the words in red pertaining to the King James Version. We want to get out of this right here because it has this particular program tonight has absolutely bewildered me. It's bewildered me pertaining to the disease. It's bewildered me pertaining to all the problems pertaining to the Middle Easterners, pertaining to the terrorists. It's bewildered me pertaining to the illegal immigrants that are now running to the border to try to get out of the environment that they're unpleasantly involved in over where they're at. And the whole thing, all of it in a nutshell, is bewildering. I mean, food's going up, merchandise is going up. Some of these things is we're having shortages on. I mean, these are all things that we are probably going to have to become adjusted to in the future, because the more and more that we get into this, the more displacencies that we're going to see, going from normal to abnormal. I'm going to change channels real quick because obviously they're talking about something that I'm not concerned about right now with. Here we go again pertaining to the troops. Please listen.
Makes total sense. The US is pretty much seen this coming now. They have thousands of staff in country. They are going to have to slowly remove them, and they have promised to thousands of Afghans who worked for them and who worked for affiliated organizations too the chance of leaving before the quite strong possibility that if the Taliban do move into Kabul, their lives could be under threat. So deploying 3,000 Marines any point now, they could start arriving in Kabul International Airport, is the logical move in providing security towards the embassy so they can begin to reduce the staff in the enormous embassy compound. I have to say, John, just watching these buildings go up over the last 10 years and now hearing they're essentially going to either have skeletal staff or be deserted, it is startling. John?
Nick, thank you. CNN Nick Baker Morse there, pulling early duty for us. We appreciate it. Thank you, Nick. CNN military analyst Lieutenant General Mark Herdling was Commanding General of the U.S. Europe and 7th Army. He is with us once again from Florida. Thank you for coming back.
Quite welcome, John. Anytime.
Okay, so last hour we spoke about the redeployment of 3,000 U.S. troops back to Afghanistan. They'll be there for the partial evacuation of the embassy, the Afghans who work with U.S. forces. Here's what the past few months have been like for one veteran of the war in Afghanistan, looking at the fate of those who helped him and his colleagues. Listen to this.
I'm one of many veterans who are sitting here in the United States and our other NATO countries who are talking, messaging with our Afghan interpreters and allies who we can't get out, and it is gut wrenching. These are people we relied on, that we promised that we wouldn't leave them behind, and we've abandoned them through bureaucracy and through failing to have a plan to get them out, and they're being hunted.
How confident are you right now that these Afghans, along with their families, will be evacuated before the Taliban takes over and their lives are really in serious jeopardy?
Well, that individual, I think, voices the concern of many. I was in that situation myself with an Iraqi interpreter, that you want them out. You want them to gain that special immigrant visa. There are a lot of them, John. And as the Taliban have created momentum for themselves, this momentum has created problems that were not anticipated early on. I believe, to answer your question, that the majority of the Afghan interpreters are going to get out under the Special Immigrant Visa Program. I actually think the plan that was voiced today through John Kirby as the Pentagon spokesman was setting the conditions, both with the program that's going to be going on in Qatar, the guarding of the airfield to protect the Afghans that are attempting to get out, as well as the potential for a ready reaction brigade if things really start breaking down. Those interpreters, those special immigrant visa holders, in my belief and in my faith in the U.S. government, are going to get out. We'll see what happens. But truthfully, John, there are probably a lot more than are anticipated right now. Early numbers said anywhere from 2,500 to 7,500. I know for a fact there are literally tens of thousands that want to get out under this program.
For the last year or so, the Taliban had tried to give an impression that their days of palling around with terror groups like Al-Qaeda had come to an end. Maybe not so. Listen to this.
Our reports show on the ground that the Al-Qaeda, on the tactical level, their operatives are helping the Taliban, with the rocket launchers. Haqqani network is considered a terrorist organization under the U.S. law. But Haqqani is the deputy, the leader of the Haqqani network is the deputy of the Taliban, leader. So imagine how much their offensive on the ground. These are global terrorism right now unfolding in Afghanistan.
There was a headline in the Washington Post from an opinion piece which was pretty blunt and direct. It said the Biden administration's response to the Taliban offensive is delusional. It also seems delusional to trust that the Taliban will keep its word when it comes that, it won't take up again with terror groups like Al-Qaeda. So it's been 20 years, more than 2,000 US soldiers have given their lives, $1 trillion in the military operation alone. Is this the end result of that operation, of all those lives lost, of all the money that was spent?
Yeah.
Talk about not getting the bang for the buck. This is the reason why that other nations, such as China and other parts of the world, did not engage in trying to bring stability to the Middle East. The reason why is because they looked at it and said, it's like playing tic-tac-toe. Don't nobody win. It's just throwing good money to bad. And you would think, after this much technology is advanced pertaining to TV and cameras and satellites and the internet, etc., you would think that them people would want to get off riding camels and maybe advance to the point of maybe becoming like the Western worlds, or like some of the nice places over in China or Japan, or places over in India, or even Africa. I mean, there's people that are advancing every day towards getting the same type of substances that we have been accustomed to over here in the West, pertaining to running water and TV and nice roads and nice bridges. But for some reason, those people over there are still riding around on camels. For some reason, they do not want to advance. They want to stay in the 18th, 19th, 20th century. And it's got to be some sort of a spiritual demonic spell that has bespelled them to the point of that type of believing and that type of thinking and that type of activity. Most of them are lazy. They won't work. They sleep under trees. You talk about hobos over here in America. You ain't never seen no hobos until you go over there into the Middle East. I mean, they don't wash. They don't clean themselves. They're just nasty. And I'm not saying that all of them are that way, but generally speaking, they're living with bugs and insects and etc. I mean, why would a human being willfully, consciously want to live that way whenever they could live like the Western world or like other places of the planet? It's got to be it's got to be a type of insanity as far as I'm concerned. And to think that all they believe in is killing a bunch of warmongers. Kill. That's of the devil. That's of Satan. Anybody that wants to break the commandments of God, but these people use God for a shield. And they'll say, well, we're doing it in honor of our God. And if we get killed, we'll die and go to heaven and live with Allah and have all the virgins we want. It's an insanity ideology that they have been bewitched under for years and years and years.
U.S. soldiers have given their lives, $1 trillion in the military operation alone. Is this the end result of that operation, of all those lives lost, of all the money that was spent?
Yeah, hey, look, John, what I'll tell you is the United States and its NATO allies made an awful lot of mistakes going into this. Over the last 20 years, there have been mistakes made in strategy, in operations, and in tactics. As we draw to the end, however, I really would put the onus back on the Afghan government and the Afghan military. You know, we used to have an expression whenever I was in combat, is that that our allies, our friends, have to want it more than we do. And with the number of forces that were trained over the years, with the number of attempts made at building an Afghan government, you know, the interesting piece is right now, how bad do the Afghans want it? And unfortunately, what we've seen over the last couple of days is they are surrendering. The government is not doing well. They are attempting to stop this momentum by the Taliban.
They're giving in to the enemy. They're becoming a traitor to their own vision, to their own dream, to their own ideal, to their own people. They're becoming a traitor. And that's what's so sickening, is that America fell for it towards trying to, I'm going to use the word convert a group of people into our way of thinking, and thought that, I guess, that we had succeeded in that with leaving so other many people with those type of positions, that they themselves should have taken the initiative of grounding it in the heads and the minds and the hearts of others. But now we're seeing that it's as if all those works for the past 20 plus years has been in vain. It's the most sickest, hideous thing that I think that I've ever witnessed in my entire life. And I don't know what the solution is. I don't know if bigger bombs is going to help. You know, whenever you're combing through areas like that, whenever you have civilians and you have some of them that claim that they want to do like the Americans, and others that are nothing but traitors to their own people. I mean, I don't have a solution to this type of environment. Like I was telling you a while ago, this is one reason why other nationalities, other nations, hasn't dibble-dabbled around in the Middle East, is because they know, or they feel like that they know, that they're throwing good money to bad. Something has happened to that group of people. They have been turned over to the devil, to the point that all they know is kill. Let's sleep under a tree and ride a camel. We could care less about the 21st century. Maybe it's the water they're drinking. I don't know. But it's a serious, serious problem that has affected America. And before it's over with, it's going to affect the planet.
It's very hard. But yes, I think we made the final mistake during the previous administration when we decided to make diplomatic efforts with the Taliban alone, knowing that they are liars, knowing that they would go back on their deal.
Exactly.
And not having the Afghan government at the table. So yes, There are a lot. There is some blame that can be put on the Biden administration, but I got to tell you, there is a lot of blame over the 20 years for various mistakes that have been made. The biggest one, I think, though, is what was done during the last administration of negotiating with the Taliban.
Yeah, it does seem to, in hindsight, maybe not a great choice. But Lieutenant General Mark Hotley.
And of course, what he's talking about there is basically under Trump's watch. If I'm not mistaken, it was Trump that invited him up to the White House, which created a great deal of static, a great deal of controversy.
Thank you so much for being with us, sir.
Thank you, John. Appreciate it.
Hundreds of thousands of Afghans, fearful of what life under the rule of the hardline Islamic militants, have tried to outrun this Taliban offensive. This year alone, 400,000 Afghans have been displaced, according to government officials. All up, more than 5 million have been forced from their homes in total, many leaving the country altogether.
Look at that. Look at those numbers. That's the Middle East. And then if you move over another block or two, you'll have another Middle Eastern country.
Finding safe haven in neighbouring Pakistan, which hosts almost 1.5 million Afghan refugees. Almost 800,000 are living in Iran. For now, though, many are heading to Kabul, but the capital seems unlikely to be under government control for much longer. CNN's Michael Holmes has details.
Families sleep on the hard ground outside this school in Afghanistan. It may not look like the most comfortable place to rest, but at least for now, it is safe, away from the trail of violence left behind by the Taliban's advance. Many bombs were dropped on our village, one woman says. The Taliban came and destroyed everything. We were helpless and had to leave our houses. One Afghan official in Kunar province, where the school is located, says there are thousands of displaced families in his province alone, trying to escape the fighting, but for some, it is too late. The Taliban were firing guns next to our house, one man says. Many bullets came our way. In the end, my wife was killed. A hospital filled with wounded civilians shows just how pitched the battle is. One patient says, I was on the side of the street. I was hit by a mortar and one of my legs was injured. Some people taking refuge in the country's capital, Kabul, thinking it is one of the safest bets with the Taliban on the move. This man left the besieged city of Lashkar 2 weeks ago, but hopes to return one day. If you ask most people in Afghanistan, 99% of the people will say the fighting is not the solution, he says. The only way is peace, and the Afghan people want peace.
That's as sad as it gets right there. Other than what's going on right here in our own backyards.
A peace that seems more elusive as more civilians are forced from their homes. Michael Holmes, CNN.
At least 5 people have been shot dead in a mass shooting in Plymouth in England's southwest. Police say the shooting is not terror-related. The suspected gunman has been found dead. When first responders arrived, they found 2 females and 2 males dead at the scene. A local member of parliament says one victim is a child under 10 years old. Another woman was treated for gunshot wounds but died later in hospital. We'll bring you more details as soon as we get them, but mass shootings are rare in the UK after gun laws were tightened in the wake of a mass shooting in Dunblane, Scotland, which left 16 children dead 25 years ago. Still to come, Mexico reporting a record number of daily COVID infections as the Delta variant fuels a worrisome surge. We'll go to Mexico City for the very latest. Plus, hundreds of thousands of people attended the Lollapalooza Music Festival in Chicago 2 weeks ago. But the number of people who caught COVID is relatively low. Tell you why officials say they think the event did not become a super spreader.
Probably because the the second variant hadn't yet made it up that far north, and there wasn't enough of it yet to turn into a super spreader like it is down in Florida, Louisiana, and Texas. It's working its way up north. It's just a matter of time before the whole nation again is going to be inundated, similar towards what happened last year with this new Delta variant, and who knows what it's going to migrate into next. I mean, it's just the roar, as I talked about a while ago, it's just getting louder. It ain't quieting down. We're going in the opposite direction of peace and utopia. Society is taking one step forward and two steps back. I mean, just this last month, the state of Tennessee issued a new gun privilege to their citizens, that now you can carry a gun and hide it in your boot, put it in your pants, put it in your bra, put it in top of your head with your hat, and never have to have a permit. Don't have to go down to the courthouse and get a special permit. Kind of like the way it is out there in Arizona. It's been out there in Arizona for several years because of all the wild coyotes coming over the border. The citizens had to do something. I don't know if Texas has done that yet, but the roar is getting louder. We are walking away from stability right into the mouth of instability. How can we stop this runaway train that obviously is running away? I'm going to tell you how. We're going to have to go back. Go back, as the first 3 chapters of Revelations talks about, towards going back to the cross, going back to the original concept of sincerity with God. Go back in trying to live a life of righteousness and holiness, the way that the Bible teaches for us to live. Go back and do thy first works over again, the Bible talks about. That's the only way that we're going to see the world come to a healing, a temporary peace, a temporary utopia in our lifetime. That's the only way. You're not going to do it by giving people money or giving people gifts. You're not going to do it by force. You're not going to do it by bribing people or blackmailing people. It's going to have to be done on a supernatural volunteer scale of people reading, listening, understanding, and having a relationship with the Father. The only reason why that I even come close of bringing up the fact that this planet has become a fatherless earth, or fatherless planet, pertaining to the very heart and soul of this planet, is now reeking in great sorrow and great misery, is because it says in the Bible that Satan is the prince of this world. Satan has always been the prince of this world, pertaining to worldly things, pertaining to sinful, ungodly things. Lucifer, the Antichrist, has always been basically the one in charge because he got kicked out of heaven. This is his only domain. He don't have no other domain. But if enough of us down here on the planet that are sincere in submitting our hearts and our lives over to Christ, eventually the meek will inherit the earth. Eventually there will be more Christians than there are non-Christians, and eventually we will see that temporary utopia or peace to fall upon the humanity through the beginning phases of a revival, escalating into a revolution. But it's going to have to begin with us. It's going to have to begin with our heart being in the right place. And I know that it hurt Mr. Biden, our leader, our chief and commander, towards having to order thousands of more troops back over to the Afghan area just to be able to take care of the problems that need to be taken care of over there. I know that had to be one of the most difficult decisions that any president, being caught between a hard place and a rock, damned if you do, damned if you don't. You know, sometimes you gotta weigh out the lesser of the two evils. Well, it's going to be bad. It's going to look bad. Yeah, but it's even going to look worse if you don't do the right thing. You know, you get caught in these positions to where either way you're going to go, it's going to be bad. Either way you go, it's going to look bad on you. It's going to be bad on you. So at that point in time, you start weighing out, well, which is the lesser of the two evils? And that's the position that Joe Biden had to take. I was listening to somebody a while ago. I don't think I caught it on my data platform, that instead of it being 3,000, it's probably going to be more like 7,000 or 8,000 that's going to be flying over there within the next 24, 48 hours. I don't know how they're going to gather up that many people. I'm pretty sure the Army has everything in check towards how they're going to call them in. But it's probably going to take more than 3,000 to get that situation settled over there pertaining to the Taliban and the terrorists that are initiating this type of gravity of this much hostility and violence. Good luck to all of us as we end our program. Good luck to each and every one of us. Let's pray for our United States troops towards what they're fixing to be engaged in. Pray for the people over in Afghanistan, the good people that want to see a conversion, that want to have peace, that want a new life. Let's pray for our leaders. Pray for the atmosphere. Pray that God has mercy on all of us. Pray that God will lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from this evil. In the Lord's name we ask. In Jesus' name we ask. And amen and amen. Once more, pray for our troops. God bless our troops. God bless America, and good luck to all of us. Shalom.